Chuck Schumer walked onto the Senate floor, the Senate Minority Leader, Democrat from New York, and he said something that has not been said out loud on the Senate floor about a sitting president's war strategy. Donald Trump says he's hoping China will help us clear the Strait of Hormuz. Are you kidding me? Schumer posted it on X. He said it publicly. And then he said the line that frames the entire political dimension of day 17 and 18 of this war. Donald Trump created a mess in the Middle East, and he clearly has no plan for how to end it. The Senate Minority Leader on the Senate floor, calling the president's war strategy a mess with no plan to end it. And he identified the specific contradiction that every diplomat, ally, and oil trader is processing in real time. Trump says the Iranians are in touch and want to make a deal. Then moments later he says all their leaders are dead, Schumer said, according to NBC News. Which one is it? The leaders want to make a deal, or we don't know who the leaders are? That is not a rhetorical question. It is the most precise description of the contradiction at the center of this war's diplomatic picture that anyone with a public platform has yet articulated. Trump says Iran wants to negotiate badly. Trump says we don't know who their leaders are. Trump says we've killed all the leaders. All of those statements were made by the same president in the same week. And now Trump is hoping China will send minesweepers to reopen a strait that the United States helped close. Are you kidding me? Let's go to the oil export data first, because it is the most important economic development confirmed in these documents. And it is the number that explains why every country is being forced to respond, whether they want to or not. Daily oil exports from the Middle Eastern Gulf, covering Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iran, Iraq, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE, dropped by at least 60% in the week ending March 15th compared to February, according to shipping data and Reuters calculations reported by NBC News. 60%. Exports from 8 countries, combined, down 60%. The most precise data set from Kpler, a shipping data firm cited by NBC News, showed exports averaged 9.71 million barrels per day in that week, down 61% from 25.13 million barrels per day in February. A second data firm, Vortexa, recorded an even more dramatic drop, 7.5 million barrels per day last week, down 71% from February's 26.1 million barrels, 71%. 3/4 of the oil that normally leaves the Gulf, gone from global markets in 1 week. NBC News described it as the world's biggest ever supply disruption. And Brent crude has surged more than 42% since the war began, according to Newsweek, settling above $103 per barrel on Tuesday. Delta's CEO Ed Bastian confirmed on Tuesday that jet fuel prices have doubled since the start of the war, according to Newsweek. Doubled. And the consequences are spreading into sectors that have nothing to do with oil. U.S. mortgage rates tied to the 10-year Treasury yield have risen back above 6%, according to Newsweek, because investors are demanding higher returns on bonds amid fears of war-driven inflation. Groceries, higher fuel prices are pushing up transportation costs, with produce, meat, and dairy expected to see price increases first because they cannot be stockpiled, Newsweek reported. Housing, food, air travel, energy, all moving in the same direction because of a strait that is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point but carries 20% of the world's oil. Now, let's talk about what the International Maritime Organization's chief said, because it directly addresses the naval coalition question that Trump has been pushing for days. Arsenio Dominguez, Secretary General of the IMO, told the Financial Times that military escorts through the Strait of Hormuz are not a long-term or sustainable solution, according to Newsweek. The combined width of the deep water shipping lanes for traffic in each direction through the strait is just 2 nautical miles. 2 nautical miles. Less than 2.5 miles. The strait is bounded on the Iranian side by mountains. Those mountains allow strikes on ships from elevated positions with little warning. Naval escorts will reduce the danger, but the risk is still there, Dominguez said. He called commercial shipping collateral damage of a conflict when the root causes have nothing to do with shipping. And he said military escort is not a long-term solution. Even the head of the International Maritime Organization, the organization that exists to promote safe maritime navigation globally, is saying that the naval coalition Trump is trying to assemble does not actually solve the problem. It reduces risk. It does not eliminate it. And here's what makes that significant in the context of this specific story. Countries are declining to send warships partly because they do not believe it will work. The IMO chief just confirmed their analysis. Let's now map every country's confirmed position on the Hormuz coalition, because by day 18, the list of confirmed refusals and hesitations is the most specific documented record of where the international community actually stands. Germany will not participate. We lack the mandate from the United Nations, the European Union, or NATO required under the Basic Law, German Chancellor Merz said at a news conference in Berlin, according to NBC News. The United States of America and Israel did not consult us prior to this war either. France will not join any military operation to open or liberate the Hormuz Strait in the current context. France did not choose this war, Macron said, according to Newsweek. France will only participate in escort missions once hostilities have eased. Italy will not join. Signals the EU anti-piracy mission in the Red Sea cannot be expanded to the Strait. Poland will not join. PM Tusk said Poland does not plan any expedition to Iran, according to Newsweek. Australia will not send a ship, confirmed by Transport Minister Catherine King. Japan not planning to send ships, confirmed by CNN. Spain will not allow U.S. bases on its soil for this operation, released strategic oil reserves but declined military involvement. Greece ruled out involvement per Al Jazeera. Netherlands ruled out involvement per Al Jazeera. UK PM Starmer confirmed it will not be a NATO mission, and Britain will not be drawn into the wider war. Working with allies on a viable plan, but no commitments made. EU as bloc, no appetite to change Operation Aspice's mandate to cover Hormuz. China, no comment on the warship request, offering humanitarian aid to Iran, Lebanon, Iraq, and Jordan instead. Poland, Greece, Netherlands, 3 additional countries that had not previously appeared in the named refusals list, now confirmed. The named coalition that Trump says is on its way. 0 countries confirmed as committed. Senator Lindsey Graham told reporters Trump was angrier than I've ever heard him over the European refusal, according to Newsweek. Trump said the U.S. does not need any help, according to Newsweek. He also said he is rebuilding the coalition and that numerous countries are on their way. He did not name any. Now let's talk about Trump's suggestion that the U.S. should rethink NATO membership, because this was the most consequential alliance statement any American president has made since the Cold War. NATO membership is certainly something that we should think about, Trump told reporters at the White House on Tuesday, according to Newsweek. He argued that European partners have rebuffed his requests for assistance while benefiting from American protection. He said the U.S. was not obliged to help in Ukraine and suggested the situations were equivalent. He then said, I just think that it's not good for a partnership when they say, what you're doing is a great thing, but we're not going to help. Trump suggested the U.S. should rethink its membership in NATO, the alliance that has been the foundation of Western security for 77 years. Newsweek noted that Trump added a softening statement after the initial remark, but the initial remark was made, on the record, at the White House, because European allies declined to send warships to a conflict they had no part in starting. The Article 5 context from Newsweek is important here. NATO is a defensive alliance. Its mutual defense obligation applies when a member is attacked and requests assistance. The treaty includes geographic limits confined to the North Atlantic region north of the Tropic of Cancer. The Strait of Hormuz is not inside NATO's geographic mandate. The EU foreign policy chief explicitly said Trump's request falls outside NATO's area of action. Trump said NATO should rethink whether the U.S. is a member, because they won't go to the Hormuz, which is outside their treaty obligations. Let's go to what the senior White House official confirmed about Iran's peace overture, because Reuters separately confirmed what CNN had reported. According to Reuters, a proposal was conveyed to Tehran through 2 intermediary countries. Iran's new Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei said now is not the right time for peace, according to a senior Iranian official who spoke to Reuters. Khamenei's wish to avenge the U.S. and Israel was very tough and serious, the official said. The Supreme Leader said the United States and Israel must be brought to their knees, accept defeat, and pay compensation. Those are 3 conditions. Brought to their knees, accept defeat, pay compensation. Trump's White House told CNN that Iran's officials reached out to Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff attempting to reopen diplomatic contact. Trump said no, and separately, 3 sources told Reuters that the Trump administration had rejected efforts by Middle Eastern allies to start diplomatic negotiations. 2 simultaneous diplomatic attempts, both rejected. While Iran's supreme leader is saying the enemy must be brought to their knees, and Trump is saying Iran wants to negotiate badly. Now let's talk about the MAGA fracture, because the political division inside Trump's own political coalition over this war broke into the open on day 18 in a specific and documented way. Joe Kent resigned as director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Kent is a decorated Special Forces veteran. He ran for Congress as a Trump-aligned candidate. He was confirmed as director of the NCTC. He resigned over the Iran war. In his resignation letter, Kent wrote that Iran posed no imminent threat to the United States when the operation began, according to Newsweek. He accused senior Israeli officials and influential U.S. media figures of conducting a misinformation campaign that convinced Trump there was a clear path to a quick victory, calling that assessment false. He drew a direct parallel to the lead-up to the Iraq War. Trump called Kent weak on security and rejected his framing. But the fracture Kent's resignation represents extends far beyond one official. Newsweek documented the specific breakdown within the MAGA coalition. Those opposing the Iran war: Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Candace Owens. Owens called Trump a traitor to his base on her podcast, saying the U.S. picked this fight and that Trump had become a never-Trumper, according to Newsweek. Those supporting the Iran war: Senators Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, conservative commentators Ben Shapiro and Sean Hannity, Mark Levin. The division produced a public feud between Mark Levin and Megyn Kelly, with Kelly calling the conflict the work of Israel firsters like Mark Levin, and Levin defending the war, according to Newsweek. That is not a fringe disagreement. That is a fracture in the political coalition that elected Trump, running from the Senate floor to podcasters to former officials in real time. On day 18 of the war, let's go to what the oil market data means for ordinary Americans, because Newsweek published the most comprehensive breakdown of the domestic economic impact in the documents reviewed. Gas prices are at their highest since October 2023, according to AAA, as cited by Newsweek. Jet fuel has doubled since the war began, Delta CEO confirmed. Mortgage rates are back above 6%. Grocery prices are expected to rise, starting with produce, meat, and dairy. British Airways canceled all flights to Dubai until at least June. Flights to Abu Dhabi canceled until October. Lufthansa extended suspension of Tel Aviv flights through April 9th. Air Canada, Delta, United, and American Airlines all suspended Tel Aviv routes, repeatedly extending the pauses. Scandinavian carrier SAS canceled select flights due to a sharp and sudden increase in fuel prices, according to Newsweek. The aviation industry's disruption is not a temporary inconvenience. Every airline that cancels or reroutes Middle East flights loses revenue, increases costs, raises fares on the routes it continues to fly, and the disruption compounds. Even if the war ended tomorrow, Humayun Falak-Shahi of Kpler told Newsweek that it would take 1 to 3 months to clear the backlog of ships and restore production. 1 to 3 months after the war ends, before oil flows normally again. Let's talk about the confirmed killing of Ali Larijani. Iran confirmed it. Iran's Supreme National Security Council posted, after a lifetime of struggle for the advancement of Iran and of the Islamic Revolution, he ultimately attained his long-held aspiration, answered the divine call, and honorably achieved the sweet grace of martyrdom in the trench of service, according to the Times of Israel. His son and bodyguards were also killed, and Gholam-Reza Soleimani, commander of the Basij paramilitary force, was also killed. Iran's state media confirmed Soleimani's death through official tributes from senior Iranian officials. Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf called him a glorious general who achieved martyrdom. The IRGC confirmed he was killed. Now, let's understand what the killing of Larijani specifically means for any future diplomatic process. Newsweek reported that Larijani was a key advisor to the late Supreme Leader on nuclear negotiations with the Trump administration. He reportedly met with mediators in Oman just 2 weeks before the war began. He was widely viewed as the most pragmatic civilian figure left above ground as Iran's leadership structure collapsed, according to Newsweek. He had relationships across Iran's political and military factions. George Washington University's Sina Azodi told CNN, as cited by Newsweek, he had close ties with everybody, the IRGC, moderate figures, and he used that to influence not just military operations, but to signal Iran's intentions to the outside world. Without Larijani, Azodi warned, a more uncompromising figure is likely to rise. The diplomatic pathways narrow. The off-ramps from the war become fewer. Netanyahu said explicitly that Israel is undermining this regime in the hope of giving the Iranian people an opportunity to remove it, according to Newsweek. That framing makes clear what Israel's strategic objective is. And Trump said on day 18, we don't even know their leaders. All of their leaders are dead, as far as we know. We don't know who we're dealing with. The person that U.S. and Israel might have negotiated with, Larijani, is now dead. The people who are left are, by the Israeli and American analysis, less likely to negotiate. And the new Supreme Leader's reported message through intermediaries was, bring us to our knees, accept defeat, pay compensation. Let's look at what the Iran parliament speaker said, because Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf's statements on day 18 are among the most specific public declarations of Iranian intent in this entire conflict. Ghalibaf told the Iranian parliament that Iran will continue the fight until the enemy shows regret and appropriate political and security conditions are created, according to NBC News. He explicitly stated, we will not accept a ceasefire. He then added something about Iran's weapons program that deserves precise reporting. But we have sufficient missile and drone reserves, and because this technology is domestic, we also have the capability to produce them at a much higher rate and at a much lower cost than the enemy's interceptor missiles, Ghalibaf said, according to NBC News. At a much higher rate and at a much lower cost. than the enemy's interceptor missiles. The Iranian parliament speaker is specifically referencing the cost asymmetry that the Day 17 script covered: $50,000 drones versus $3 million to $10 million interceptors. He is saying, we can produce drones faster than you can produce interceptors. And our drones are cheap, and your interceptors are expensive. He also said that after the June 2025 war, Iran changed its missile launchers, and the enemy cannot hit them. New launchers, harder to target. He is describing a military system that adapted specifically in response to the lessons of the previous conflict. Let's go to what the White House said about the war's timeline, because a senior White House official gave the most specific timeline yet. Kush Desai, special assistant to President Trump and senior deputy press secretary, told Al Jazeera that the U.S. expects a military resolution to the war in Iran within 4 to 6 weeks, according to Newsweek. 4 to 6 weeks, from day 18. That puts the projected resolution at somewhere between day 46 and day 60. The War Powers Act clock expires on approximately day 59. The IDF's planning horizon extends to approximately day 58, as confirmed by IDF spokesman Defrin's earlier statements, a senior White House official's 4 to 6 week projection. The IDF's confirmed planning horizon, the War Powers Act deadline. All three land within days of each other. Let's close by pulling together the political picture that has emerged. The Senate Minority Leader on the Senate floor said, Trump has no plan. A coalition of countries including Germany, France, Italy, Poland, Australia, Japan, Spain, Greece, Netherlands, and the EU, as a bloc, confirmed they will not send ships. The IMO chief said naval escorts don't solve the problem anyway. A decorated Special Forces veteran and Trump-aligned National Counterterrorism Center director resigned, saying Trump was deceived into the war. MAGA commentators including Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, Candace Owens, and Marjorie Taylor Greene have publicly opposed the war. The U.S. and Israel killed Ali Larijani, Iran's most senior pragmatic official and nuclear negotiator. Iran's parliament speaker said Iran can produce drones faster and cheaper than the U.S. can produce interceptors, and will not accept a ceasefire. Iran's new supreme leader said through intermediaries, bring us to our knees, accept defeat, pay compensation. Middle East oil exports are down 60 to 71% from February. Jet fuel has doubled. Mortgage rates are back above 6%. Groceries are about to get more expensive. British Airways won't fly to Dubai until June. Trump said the U.S. doesn't need any help and can reopen Hormuz alone. Trump also said the U.S. should rethink NATO membership. A White House official projected a military resolution in 4 to 6 weeks. And Schumer asked, you're hoping China saves you? Are you kidding me? Day 17. Day 18. 60% of the Gulf's oil exports gone. And the man who was best positioned to negotiate a path out is dead. And his killer says the process will not happen all at once, and it will not be easy. And the man he was supposed to negotiate with says it is not the right time for peace. Which one is it? The leaders want to make a deal. Or we don't know who the leaders are, Schumer asked. Nobody answered. Let's go deeper on the 60% oil export collapse and what it means for the global economy. Because 60% sounds like a statistic. What it represents is the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. NBC News reported that the International Energy Agency called this the world's biggest ever supply disruption. Biggest ever. Not since Ukraine. Not since the 1973 Arab oil embargo. The biggest ever. And here is what makes the 60% number more alarming than it appears at first reading. The 8 countries whose exports collapsed collectively account for a significant share of global crude oil production. Saudi Arabia alone is the world's largest oil exporter. Kuwait is a major producer. Iraq exports 3.4 to 3.5 million barrels per day normally. The UAE is a significant producer and transit hub. Qatar's LNG contributes roughly a fifth of global liquefied natural gas trade. When 60 to 71% of those combined exports disappear in 1 week, the world does not immediately run out of oil. The world has strategic reserves. The IEA is releasing 400 million barrels collectively. The U.S. alone is releasing 172 million barrels. Those reserves are real, and they buy time. But reserves are not a permanent supply. They are a bridge. A bridge from now to whenever the Strait of Hormuz reopens and Gulf exports resume. Falak Shahi of Kpler put a number on that bridge. Even after the war ends, 1 to 3 months to clear the backlog and restore production. The IEA's 400 million barrel coordinated release covers approximately 26 days of the lost daily supply at the 60% reduction level. 26 days. Then the bridge ends. And if the strait is still contested when the 26 days are up, the world faces the oil price consequences without the cushion of the reserve release. That is the economic timeline that Goldman Sachs, the IEA, and every oil analyst is working with. And it is why the Schumer question, you're hoping China saves you, lands so hard, because China is the answer, not militarily. Diplomatically, China has the relationship with Iran. China is Iran's largest oil buyer. China has the economic leverage, buying or not buying Iranian oil, that the US and Israel do not have. If China wanted to help end this conflict, it could. Not by sending minesweepers, by telling Iran that the price of continued Hormuz disruption is the loss of China's diplomatic and economic support. Trump is publicly asking China to send warships. The thing China could actually do that would change the situation is something Trump has not publicly asked for. Because asking China to pressure Iran diplomatically would require acknowledging that China has leverage in this region that the US does not. Trump is asking for ships. What he might need is a phone call. Let's talk about the specific civilian casualties on day 18 that deserve individual documentation. Because the numbers accumulate and the individual lives inside them get lost. Al Jazeera confirmed that a 3-day-old infant and his 2-year-old sister were killed in an airstrike on their home in Iraq. Their mother was killed. Their grandmother was killed. 4 members of the same family. 3 days old, 2 years old in Iraq. On day 18. Meanwhile, the Amnesty International report on the Minab school strike confirmed the U.S. was responsible for a strike that killed at least 170 people, most of them schoolgirls, 160 girls in a school. Amnesty International's conclusion, the U.S. failed to take all feasible precautions to avoid civilian harm. NBC News confirmed this finding. And in Lebanon, more than 69,900 pregnant women are enduring severe physical and psychological risks as Israeli bombardment forces displacement, according to Care International, as reported by Newsweek. Some women are giving birth in cars, in schools, on roadsides, without medical support, without clean water, without privacy. One aid worker described seeing a woman who had undergone a cesarean section lying on a sidewalk with her 4-day-old baby, newborn babies on sidewalks, because more than 1 million people have been displaced in Lebanon, and more than 1,000 have been killed, on a front that opened because of a war that started in Iran. Let's look at what Iran's parliament speaker said specifically about drones and production, because Ghalibaf's statement about drone manufacturing deserves its own treatment. He said Iran's drone technology is domestic. He said Iran can produce drones at a much higher rate and at a much lower cost than the enemy's interceptor missiles. That statement, coming from the Speaker of Iran's parliament, is a direct response to the Helios and laser defense discussion from the Day 17 script. Iran knows the cost asymmetry problem it has created for the U.S. $50,000 drones versus $3 million to $10 million interceptors. Ghalibaf is saying that ratio is permanent. We can build faster than you can shoot down, and the Helios laser system, the cents per engagement solution, is one system on one ship. Iran is describing a production rate that can scale, a drone factory that is domestic, that does not depend on foreign supply chains, that can rebuild after strikes. Israel struck a drone manufacturing facility in Isfahan earlier in this conflict. Iran is still launching drones. The production capacity is not eliminated by the strikes. It is disrupted. And Ghalibaf is saying it can be rebuilt and scaled. That is not a defeated military's posture. That is the posture of a military system that is planned for this scenario. Let's talk about Trump's statement about rethinking NATO membership and what it means for the European security architecture. Because NATO membership is certainly something that we should think about, is not a casual remark. It is a statement that goes to the heart of the deterrence relationship between the United States and its European allies. NATO's credibility depends on Article 5, the commitment that an attack on one member is an attack on all. That commitment has deterred Russian aggression against NATO members since 1949. It deterred Soviet expansion during the Cold War. It underpins Germany's defense. It underpins Poland's defense. It underpins the Baltic states' defense. If the United States is suggesting it should reconsider NATO membership because European allies did not send warships to the Persian Gulf, a body of water that is not in NATO's area of operations, then the credibility of that deterrence commitment comes into question. Not because Trump will actually leave NATO, but because every government in Europe that depends on the American security guarantee has to calculate what else might the U.S. threaten to withdraw over. Germany already committed to a massive defense buildup after Russia invaded Ukraine. Poland is spending more on defense than almost any NATO member as a percentage of GDP. Those decisions were made partly in reliance on the American Article 5 guarantee. Trump's NATO membership comment, even if never acted upon, introduces uncertainty into a security calculation that every European government is making every day. And that uncertainty has strategic costs. Let's look at the IEA's reserve release math one final time. Because the 400 million barrel coordinated release was announced to address a 60% supply disruption. The Gulf normally exports approximately 25 million barrels per day. 60% of 25 million is 15 million barrels of daily supply lost. 400 million barrels divided by 15 million missing barrels per day equals approximately 26 days of coverage, 26 days. The White House projects a military resolution in 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks is 28 to 42 days. The reserve release covers 26 days. If the military resolution takes 28 to 42 days, the reserve bridge runs out approximately 2 to 16 days before the war ends. That is the economic timeline. And it assumes the 60% disruption does not worsen. It assumes Karg Island's oil infrastructure is not struck. It assumes Iran does not execute its threat to burn American-linked energy facilities across the Gulf. Both of those threats exist and are documented. If either is triggered, the 60% disruption becomes something more severe. And the reserve release covers fewer days. Let's place everything from day 17 and 18 in one final summary. Middle East oil exports down 60 to 71%. The largest supply disruption in global oil market history. Ali Larijani, Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, confirmed killed. Iran confirmed. Gholam Reza Soleimani, Basij commander, confirmed killed. Iran confirmed. Iran's new supreme leader said through intermediaries, "Not the right time for peace. Bring us to our knees. Pay compensation." Trump rejected diplomatic outreach from Iran via Witkoff. Trump rejected mediation offers from U.S. Middle East allies. A senior White House official said Iran reached out. Iran's FM denied it. Both are on the record. Joe Kent, National Counterterrorism Center Director, resigned. Called Trump's war a mistake, said Iran posed no imminent threat. Compared it to the Iraq War. Trump called Kent weak on security. Germany, France, Italy, Poland, Australia, Japan, Spain, Greece, Netherlands, EU bloc, all confirmed they will not send warships. Trump suggested rethinking NATO membership. Trump said the U.S. doesn't need any help. Trump said oil prices will drop like a rock when the war ends. Trump said the war will end soon. The Iran parliament speaker said Iran will not accept a ceasefire. Iran's parliament speaker said Iran can produce drones faster and cheaper than the U.S. can produce interceptors. The IMO chief said naval escorts don't solve the problem. Schumer said, "You're hoping China saves you? Are you kidding me?" Iran confirmed the killing of its two most senior officials in the war since the supreme leader himself. And 1 week before the Persian New Year, Netanyahu told Iranians to go out and celebrate. "We're watching from above," he said. Day 18, the world's largest supply disruption. The man who could have negotiated a path out is dead. The new supreme leader says, "Bring us to our knees." And the Senate minority leader is asking if the president has a plan. The answer, from the documented record, is a White House official said 4 to 6 weeks. And the IEA's reserve bridge lasts 26 days. Day 18, Schumer asked. Nobody answered. That is the math, and nobody likes the answer it produces. The reserve's bridge lasts 26 days. The White House says 4 to 6 weeks. The IDF plans through Passover. The war powers clock expires April the 28th. Larijani is dead. The parliament speaker says no ceasefire. The supreme leader says bring us to our knees. 60 to 71% of Gulf exports are gone. Schumer said, "Are you kidding me?" And the war is on day 18.